January 21st, 1968. 29,000 feet above the Arctic Circle, north of Greenland. The hum of 8 Pratt & Whitney turbojets fills the cockpit. A constant metallic thunder that Captain John Hogg can feel through the soles of his boots. Outside, the world is nothing but black sky and white void. Greenland's ice cap stretching endlessly beneath the wings of the B-52G Stratofortress. Callsign Hobo Divdesmitastoni. Inside the aircraft. The air smells wrong. At first, it's faint, a sharp, acrid hint that doesn't belong among hydraulic fluid and cold metal. Then the smoke alarm chirps once. Then again, navigator Captain Robert Wilson looks up from his charts. "Do you smell that?" Hogg doesn't answer immediately. His eyes are already scanning the instrument panel, his gloved hand tightening on the yoke. The B-52 has been airborne for nearly 11 hours, part of Operation Chrome Dome. The U.S. Air Force's continuous airborne nuclear patrol, designed to ensure that nuclear-armed bombers are always in the sky, always ready. Even if the unthinkable happens back home, in the rear of the aircraft, Major Alfred DeMott, the co-pilot, twists in his seat as a thin ribbon of gray smoke curls from the lower deck. "Smoke," he says flatly. "We've got smoke." The Arctic night offers no mercy. Outside temperature, -40 degrees Celsius. Inside the bomber, rising heat, tension, disbelief. Hogg reaches for the intercom. "Crew, this is the aircraft commander. We may have a fire on board. Begin emergency procedures." Below them, strapped into the bomb bay, are 4 B-28 Fi thermonuclear bombs, each one with a yield many times greater than the weapon that destroyed Hiroshima. They are not armed for detonation, but they are very real, very heavy, and very much along for the ride. The fire starts small, almost insultingly mundane. An electric heater, placed beneath the navigator's seat to fight the brutal Arctic cold, has malfunctioned. Cushions ignite. Wiring begins to burn. What should have been a minor inconvenience becomes something else entirely, as flames crawl unseen through the aircraft's insulated spaces. Smoke thickens. It stings eyes, claws at lungs. Down below, near Thule Air Base, radar operators track Hobo 28 as it follows its racetrack pattern along the edge of Greenland. A silent guardian, carrying the weight of Cold War paranoia over a land officially declared nuclear-free by Denmark. Minutes pass. The fire does not go out. Fire's spreading. A crewman reports, his voice strained. "We can't contain it." Hogg makes the call. "We're diverting to Thule." The bomber banks slightly, its massive wings cutting through polar air. But the fire has other plans. Suddenly, the cockpit fills with smoke so thick it blots out the instrument lights. The aircraft begins to shudder as electrical systems fail one by one. The B-52 is no longer a strategic asset. It is a burning cathedral of aluminum and fuel. Altitude drops. Controls are sluggish. DeMott says, "Roger." Hogg replies, "We're losing her." At 23,000 feet, the situation becomes irreversible. Flames have eaten through critical control lines. The bomber is flying on borrowed seconds. Hogg's voice hardens. "Prepare to abandon aircraft." For a heartbeat, no one moves. This isn't training. Below them is not ocean or friendly land. It's the frozen crown of Greenland, a lethal expanse where survival after ejection is uncertain at best. But the order stands, one by one. Crew members clip on parachutes, crawling through smoke-filled compartments. The roar of the engines is now uneven, angry, as if the aircraft itself knows what's coming. Navigator Wilson reaches the escape hatch and looks back once. Through the haze, he can just make out the bomb bay doors below, steel and secrets locked together. Tumbling toward history, "God help us," someone mutters. At 22:37 local time, Captain Hogg ejects. Cold air explodes into the cockpit as the hatch blows. The B-52 lurches violently, suddenly lighter, suddenly uncommanded. Hogg is ripped upward into the Arctic night, the sound of tearing metal fading behind him. Moments later, Hobo 28 continues alone. Without a crew, without control, without mercy. The Stratofortress slams into the ice near North Star Bay, just miles from Thule Air Base. Fuel detonates on impact, a fireball briefly illuminating the polar darkness like a false sunrise. And beneath the shattered fuselage, something far more dangerous than wreckage is breaking apart. Something the world was never meant to see, scattered across the ice. January 21st, 1968, North Star Bay, Greenland. The explosion is not a single sound. It is a layered catastrophe. First, the thunderclap of aviation fuel igniting, then the tearing shriek of aluminum disintegrating, then a deep, unsettling whump as the bomb bay slams into the ice with unimaginable force. For a brief instant, the Arctic night is lit brighter than day, the ice cap glowing orange, shadows racing across snowdrifts like fleeing ghosts. Then darkness rushes back in. At Thule Air Base, the shockwave rattles windows. Radar screens flicker. Men who have spent years staring into Cold War nothingness suddenly stand up straight. What the hell was that? Someone says. Within minutes, emergency sirens cut through the frozen air. Trucks roar to life. Floodlights swing toward the distant plume of black smoke smearing the horizon. No one at Thule yet knows what has crashed. Only that something very large has fallen out of the sky, on the ice. Wreckage burns. The B-52's fuselage has shattered across a wide debris field. Metal fragments scattered like bones across the snow. Fuel continues to burn in pockets, sending columns of oily smoke upward, staining the pristine Arctic white with ash and soot. And then there are the bombs. The 4 B-28 Fi thermonuclear weapons do exactly what they were designed not to do. They do not detonate. They're conventional high explosives. However, the chemical charges meant to compress the nuclear core during detonation slam into the ice at high speed. The impact triggers them, ripping the weapons apart violently but non-nuclearly. Plutonium pits shatter. Uranium fragments scatter. Tritium gas vents into the freezing air. A radioactive snowstorm blooms outward, invisible and deadly. By the time the first rescue teams approach the crash site, they have no idea they are walking into a contamination zone. Sergeant First Class James R. Mackenzie steps off a tracked vehicle and immediately tastes metal in his mouth. The air smells burnt, not just fuel, but something sharper, almost electric. Spread out, an officer shouts over the wind. Look for survivors. They find wreckage. They find fire. They find scorched parachutes half buried in snow. Proof that some of the crew escaped. What they do not find is intact nuclear weapons. Within hours, the truth begins to surface. At Thule's command center, Colonel John Davenport receives a call routed through layers of encryption and urgency. The voice on the other end is clipped, controlled, and unmistakably shaken. Colonel, this is Strategic Air Command. We've lost contact with a Chrome Dome aircraft. It was carrying special weapons. Davenport closes his eyes for a moment. How many? He asks. A pause. 4. That single word lands heavier than the Arctic itself. Denmark, which governs Greenland, has long maintained a strict policy, no nuclear weapons on its territory. It's a political promise, one that now lies shattered across the ice. By dawn, the crash site is sealed off. Men in protective gear arrive, their movements stiff and careful. Geiger counters chatter constantly, a mechanical clicking that never stops. Like insects crawling under the skin, radiation levels spike wildly across the debris field. Jesus, one technician mutters, watching the needle jump. It's everywhere. Snow samples glow with contamination. Aircraft fragments are hot to the touch in more ways than one. The ice itself has become a ledger of fallout, each square meter recording the consequences of Cold War doctrine. Meanwhile, the crew of Hobo 28 begins to be accounted for. 7 men are found alive, scattered across the ice after parachuting into sub-zero hell. Frostbitten, injured, alive against all odds. 1 man is missing. Co-pilot Major Alfred DeMott never made it out. Search teams eventually find his body near the wreckage, thrown from the aircraft before he could eject, killed instantly on impact. He is quietly logged as the first casualty of what officials will later call an accident. But there is nothing accidental about the next phase. Within days, the U.S. military launches Operation Crested Ice, a massive cleanup effort involving more than 700 personnel, specialized equipment, and round-the-clock operations in one of the harshest environments on Earth. The mission: remove every trace of radioactive contamination. The reality: an impossible task. Workers shovel snow into barrels. They cut away chunks of ice. They bag debris and load it onto ships bound for the United States. Every movement is monitored. Every breath feels borrowed. And yet, whispers begin almost immediately. Because as inventories are checked and serial numbers cross-referenced, an unsettling discrepancy emerges. 4 bombs went down, but only 3 appear to be fully accounted for. Somewhere beneath the Greenland ice, or beyond it, something may be missing. Something that was never meant to be lost. Late January 1968. Thule Air Base, Greenland. The Arctic wind never stops. It only changes pitch. Across North Star Bay, floodlights burn day and night, illuminating a landscape that no longer belongs to nature. Bulldozers crawl across the ice. Men in white protective suits move with rehearsed precision, their faces hidden behind masks, fogged with breath and fear. The Geiger counters never go silent. Each crackle is a reminder that the Cold War is no longer an abstract threat, debated in Washington or Moscow. It's under their boots, soaked into the ice, inside a temporary command tent. Colonel Davenport stands over a map littered with red grease pencil marks. Every mark represents contaminated ground. Every gap represents uncertainty. A young Air Force officer clears his throat. "Sir, inventory's complete." Davenport doesn't look up. "And?" The officer hesitates. "Just long enough. We can confirm recovery of components from 3 weapons. The 4th, we don't have full accounting." The tent feels smaller instantly. Outside, engines rumble. Helicopter rotors beat the air. The operation continues as if nothing has changed. But inside the command structure, alarms are sounding. Strategic Air Command in Omaha is notified within the hour. The response is immediate and classified at the highest level. Officially, all weapons are accounted for. Unofficially, no one will put their name on that sentence, because while plutonium fragments are found scattered across miles of ice, certain critical components, parts of a complete nuclear assembly, are simply not there. They may have sunk into the ice. They may have been pulverized beyond recognition, or they may have slipped into the dark water beneath the ice shelf. No one knows, and that is the problem. Meanwhile, in Copenhagen, the phones begin ringing. Denmark's Prime Minister, Hilmar Baunsgaard, receives word that a U.S. bomber carrying nuclear weapons has crashed on Greenland, Danish territory. The revelation hits like a diplomatic concussion. For years, Denmark has publicly assured its citizens that no nuclear weapons are stationed or transported on its soil. Now the proof lies scattered in radioactive snow. Baunsgaard demands answers. Washington sends reassurances. Private cables fly back and forth, filled with careful language and strategic omissions. O.S. Officials insist the weapons were not deployed. They were merely in transit. They emphasize that no nuclear detonation occurred. What they do not emphasize is that radioactive contamination has permanently altered part of Greenland. Back on the ice, cleanup crews work 12-hour shifts in temperatures that can kill exposed skin in minutes. Men collapse from exhaustion. Frostbite claims fingers. Radiation exposure logs quietly fill with numbers no one wants to calculate long-term. One worker, a civilian contractor from Texas, vomits behind a snowbank after his suit alarm begins screaming. They tell him it's stress. They tell everyone it's stress. Snow is scraped away layer by layer, loaded into steel containers, and shipped south. Over 0 tons of contaminated ice and debris removed in total. The Arctic is slowly shaved down, as if someone is trying to erase a mistake by sanding away the page. But the ice remembers. Beneath the surface, radioactive particles seep downward, following meltwater channels, embedding themselves into a system that no one fully understands. And then there is the other silence. Among the recovered debris is evidence that one bomb's secondary stage may never have been found. A component too sensitive to name publicly. A piece whose absence fuels speculation that lasts decades. Official reports will later insist no nuclear weapon was lost. But reports are written by men, and men are constrained by politics. By 1969, Operation Chrome Dome is quietly terminated. The airborne nuclear patrols end. Bombers stop circling the Arctic with doomsday in their bellies. Publicly, the program ends because of operational risk. Privately, everyone knows why. One burning aircraft over Greenland came within seconds and meters of rewriting human history. Years later, Danish workers involved in the cleanup begin to get sick. Cancers, immune disorders, unexplained illnesses. They ask questions. They seek compensation. They are told there is no proven link. The ice keeps its secrets. The documents stay classified, and the Arctic night swallows the truth. Just as it did that January evening, somewhere beneath Greenland's frozen surface. The shadow of Hobo 28 still lies, a reminder that the Cold War was never as controlled as anyone wanted to believe. Early 1970s. Washington, D.C. The hearing room smells of paper, polish, and restraint. Men in dark suits sit beneath the seal of the United States government, their faces carefully neutral as microphones hum softly in front of them. Outside these walls, the world believes the Thule incident is settled. An unfortunate accident. Thoroughly cleaned, responsibly handled. Inside, the story is still bleeding. A senior Air Force official adjusts his glasses and reads from a prepared statement. His voice is calm, measured, engineered. There was no nuclear detonation. At no point was the public in danger. Across the room, a congressional aide underlines a sentence in red ink. At no point? The questions come politely, then less so. Were all nuclear components recovered? Yes, sir. Can you state that under oath? Yes. The answers never change. Not in public. Not on the record. What doesn't make it into the transcripts are the classified annexes. The footnotes that hedge. The memoranda stamped secret restricted data. The margins filled with uncertainty. Because within the Department of Defense, the Thule crash has become a case study in something far more dangerous than mechanical failure. Plausible deniability. The Cold War demands confidence. Admitting that a nuclear weapon might be missing beneath Arctic ice is not confidence. It's vulnerability. So the narrative is locked. In Denmark, the reckoning is quieter, but no less bitter. Greenlandic and Danish workers who shoveled radioactive snow file petitions. They describe cracked skin, failing organs, illnesses doctors can't easily explain. They ask their government why they were never warned. Officials respond with studies, with delays, with silence. For decades, the official Danish position mirrors Washington's no lasting danger, no proven harm, no wrongdoing. Behind closed doors, internal reports tell a different story. Elevated radiation exposure, inadequate protective gear, cleanup standards improvised in a crisis. But acknowledging that would mean acknowledging something worse. That a small, remote corner of the world was sacrificed to preserve the illusion of control. Back at Thule, the ice slowly reclaims the scar. Snowdrifts fill in bulldozer tracks. Wind erases footprints from the air. North Star Bay looks untouched again. Pristine, eternal, innocent. But below the surface, the contamination remains. Plutonium-239 has a half-life of 24,000 years, long after the Cold War ends, long after the Soviet Union collapses, long after the men who made the decisions are gone. The Arctic will still remember. In 1995, documents are finally declassified. Journalists pore over yellowed pages, diagrams, memos, inventory lists that don't quite add up. The question resurfaces in headlines and documentaries. Was a nuclear bomb lost in Greenland? The official answer remains unchanged. No, but the confidence is thinner now. Former officials speak carefully, choosing words like highly unlikely and functionally recovered. Engineers debate whether a weapon can truly be considered recovered if its core is fragmented and unretrievable. The truth sits somewhere in the gray, the most dangerous place of all. The Thule crash never became a nuclear explosion, but it did explode a myth. The myth that nuclear weapons could be carried endlessly, safely, without consequence. The myth that accidents could be contained. The myth that the Cold War was fought with precision rather than luck. On January 21st, 1968, luck held, barely, and beneath Greenland's ice, the remains of that luck still sleep, silent, unseen, and radioactive.